Welcome back to Rounding the Bases Extra Innings. 4 final questions with John Kolhoff, who is an owner of 7 Brew Coffee, among many other things. If you want to learn all about John's endeavors, whether it be pharmacy, real estate, government, coffee, check out the audio version of this podcast. I highly recommend it. Some really, really cool and interesting stuff in there. Here is the first question for you as we round the bases. Real simple one. What's your go-to coffee drink?
I am pretty boring. I do black coffee most of the time. If I wanna mix it up, another one of the, I think, a differentiator for 7 Brew is that most of our drinks are made with half and half, so a little bit richer. If I want to mix it up for my regular coffee, I'll go with a breve. So it's like a latte made with a little bit more cream. It's a little bit richer, and it's fantastic.
All right, I'll need to do that as my backup because I'm a black coffee guy generally too, or occasionally I like a latte for a little pick-me-up. Second question, as we round the bases, in all the research, there are a million fun facts with you because you're involved in so many things. I learned that you are the organizer of the Wild West Gravel Fest. That sounds interesting. What in the world is it?
The Wild West Gravel Fest started out as a gravel bike race. I got hot after gravel right before the pandemic, and I signed up for 4 awesome races, and they all got canceled. And I told my buddy, I think the only way I'm going to get to do a gravel race this year is if I put it on. And so I had never actually been in a bike race before, and I started setting it up. And fortunately, I got to go to a couple before we actually had our event. Like, I learned a little bit along the way, but we have just kind of an awesome time. We've kind of evolved it a little bit. So now we're doing a 5K with it. And we've changed the distances up kind of based off of some feedback, but gravel bike racing and 5K on gravel. So that's the Wild West Gravel Fest. It's usually we'll have some music in Friday night, and then all the races will be Saturday. We have it in Old Abilene Town. If you haven't been to Old Abilene Town, it's kind of a throwback treasure. We've got gunfighters and can dancers, and there's a saloon, and it's an experience. It's a good time.
Good old time. Sounds like a lot of fun. So we talked in the audio version of the podcast. Third question here as we round the bases, among the many things you're doing, you're involved in government as well, and so very involved in Abilene City Commissioner, Vice Mayor, will be mayor at some point. And hopefully hopefully we're done with the toughest of times. I think that politically we're just a mess all over the country right now, no matter where you're at. I still will blame a lot of it on social media and how easy it is now to be mean to people versus the face-to-face of being nice to people. The decency of the old days where people would reach across the aisle, at least, in Congress, and go out for a drink afterwards. And I don't know how much of that stuff is going on. It may be different locally, but still in politics wherever you go. And then we had the whole COVID shutdown and Zoom and in person. I know you dealt with some of that too. How have you managed to kind of get through this in a world where, especially in community, where you want to be able to talk, communicate, and understand everyone?
Fortunately, actually, I was not in city government during the pandemic, so I didn't have to experience that. But certainly, it's all local. We're not, as city commissioners, we're nonpartisan, and so really, it's just kind of really just listening to people. I mean, listening to the people around you and listening to your community, and asking them what they want, and trying to deliver that in the most efficient way and with limited resources. So. Yeah, it's there's not a lot of drama in city government. It's just kind of fixing roads and that type of thing. So I think sure the water's clean.
Yeah, but I mean, I think there's a message there too. You just hit on it. It sounds so simple. It's just about listening to people, and we all struggle to do that, right? We're so in our phones. I'm just as guilty as anybody else too. So I think there's a strong message there, and maybe that's what it takes. The local city government. In the midst of fixing roads and potholes and making sure water's okay, that we actually listen and we hear each other. I think that's what it is, don't you? We all just want to be heard.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a challenge. I think Abilene maybe is still small enough, but in bigger cities, I think most people just think that their voice doesn't matter, and so that's kind of I guess hopefully what I think I'm bringing anyway is just being available. Everybody in the city has my cell phone number. I put it out there on my application. If somebody wants to call me, they've got an issue with with something going on in the city, I want them to call me. If they don't call me, I'm not going to know about it. And you can't fix a problem you don't know about. So
yeah, I love that. That's great. All right, last question, the walk-off. Let's talk a little more Abilene here, because you mentioned it early in the podcast. When you think of Abilene, first and foremost, you think of President Eisenhower. My parents have traveled all over the country. Once they got to retirement, and while still in retirement now, they love to visit presidential libraries. That is their thing. So I haven't been to Abilene yet, which I can't believe I'm admitting that to you, but I have not been. I'm never going to get to any of your summer festivals, that, unless the Royals move a game to Abilene. But I would like to get to the library at some point. My parents loved it. I think they even met somebody while they're in the library that knew who I was on TV, so they thought that was really, really cool. But tell me about the legacy of Eisenhower and Abilene, because I think that legacy will always be there. It'll always have Abilene on the map, at least for that. And obviously, there's so much more going on that you've talked about too. Yeah,
we've just gotten a new director here. Gosh, it's probably been 7 or 8 years ago now, Dawn Hammond, who's just been phenomenal for the library. She oversaw the renovation there. We also have kind of hand in hand, they work together, the Eisenhower Foundation, and they're actually doing a really, really good job of educating people about Ike and the legacy of Ike. And that's something actually kids in Kansas City are probably seeing that. It's called Ike Education. One of my wife's friends is kind of spearheading that, and it's just going to be phenomenal. They're also working on getting a new facility. I'm sure you can imagine. They were in the Eisenhower Library when COVID hit, and then they were told that they couldn't come to work anymore. They're like, well, just because the government's shut down, we still have to work. So they're kind of locked out of their offices, and I think they really have a great plan for really continuing the education, continuing the legacy of Ike through that education program. I'd give you numbers if I knew them, but I think they're in like most of the states, multiple countries, presenting education really on Ike and his legacy throughout the world.
Well, I will get there eventually. Maybe it's an off-season thing. I know where to find you. I got yourself one like everybody else in Abilene too. So I mean, I feel I'm not even an Abilene resident, and I have it. So how about that?
That's great.
John, appreciate spending all the time again. Everybody check out 7 Brew. Check out the audio version of this podcast to learn a lot more. Thanks for all the time on Rounding the Bases.
Thanks, Joel.